Let's look at one way to do theatrical style lighting like this with 2 lights and 1 reflector. Check this out. Now, most of us are shooting at home or on a pretty low budget, so there's some challenge that come along with the kind of the traditional 3-point lighting. Number one, you need 3 lights, and it's not an insurmountable issue, but it is a little easier if you can shoot with 2, so let's look at how you can do that. Also, one of the challenges with 3-point lighting is that typically you have a key light, you have a fill light, and then you have a hair light. And ideally the hair light should be suspended up above, pointing down at your talent. At home, it's pretty tough to suspend something from up above. We don't have lighting grids at home typically. So this is one type of lighting that I've devised that I've used on location in a number of cases, and I'm using here. Simplifies that in some ways. You don't have to suspend the light from above. You do need to get it up on a light stand, hopefully up relatively high and pointed down at your talent, but it doesn't have to be hanging from the ceiling. Now, there are a couple of other considerations as well. This type of lighting, you are going to need some space. You can't do this in a tiny bedroom. So right now, the way I have things set up, it's about 11 feet from my camera to the backdrop. And so again, you can't defy the laws of physics. You do need a little bit of room if you're going to do this style of lighting. There are other styles of lighting you can do, obviously, in smaller spaces. Maybe we'll take a look at those in future episodes. Now, this whole setup requires a few things. Obviously, in this case, I'm using a black backdrop. You can use black sheets if you wanted to. In my case, I am using a black backdrop made by Impact, and I'll put a link for that down below. The nice thing about this one is that it has a wire frame, a relatively substantial wire frame around the outside, and so it holds the black background very flat, and so you don't have a lot of issues with wrinkles. First, you've got your key light here. This is a PhotoFlex Starlite QL, which is a tungsten light, so a large bulb. This is a 1,000-watt model, and it's inside of a Silverdome NXT, which is the large size softbox. I got it on Amazon for $350. That was on special at the time. The price is not always that much. It's usually a fair bit more, but it has been a great light. I love it. It's for a softbox. It's relatively large. And this is over a meter right here, just for reference. So it does produce a very nice soft light. I place it about 3 to 4 feet from my talent off to about somewhere between about 45 degrees, maybe a little bit closer to the camera than 45 degrees. And what that does is that provides, of course, a key light, and it wraps around the side of the face just a little bit. Next step, of course, is a reflector to fill in light on the other side of your talent's face. And the idea here is you want it to be fairly subtle to retain a little bit of the mysterious look. So you don't want to fill in everything, all of the shadows, but you do want to fill in enough. And this is where I think it's interesting because you can get away with a key light and not use a fill light. Instead, you can just use a fill reflector, and that sort of adds to the mysterious feel of this overall look. You will want to tweak the angle of the reflector until you get it just right, so you have enough fill light filling in the details on the other side of your talent's face. And then finally, of course, we are using a kicker light, or what I would call a kicker light in this case. You could call it a hair light, a backlight, whatever you want to call it. In this particular case, I'm using a tungsten Fresnel light. You could also use an inexpensive, $10 or $15 shop light from your hardware store. The only issue with those is that you will have to use some sort of flag, some sort of maybe foam core board to keep the light from spilling absolutely everywhere. Those are our floodlights, and they're made to go everywhere. So you will need to do something to keep it from shining into the lens of your camera, for example, and lowering the contrast of your overall scene, because this scene or this type of lighting is really about contrast. So in my case, I really like the Fresnel light because I also have the barn doors on it, so you can contain exactly where the light falls. And what I do is I get it up as close to the ceiling as I can on my light stand, and then point it down at the back of the talent. Now, I try to keep it not perfectly behind the talent, but not off by too far. So just off to the side where it's just out of the frame, but it's enough to shine on the back of your talent's head and just start to wrap around the back just a little bit. So you get that kind of, again, high contrast look, type of thing that you might see on stage in a theater. Now, of course, one of the key things to this look is getting your exposure right. Make sure you're exposing for your key light. Don't be messing around with pointing your camera at the backdrop, which is black. It's going to mess up the exposure. So if you need help getting that exposure just right, check out our previous episode on how to set exposure manually. And I think really the key to this is using something like a gray card. If you have something like that, that's probably the least expensive way to do it, getting a gray card of some sort. Or if you have a light meter, obviously you can use that as well and just get a reading from the position of your talent to the key light itself. Go ahead and leave questions for us down below. If there anything here wasn't very clear to you and you'd like a little more information, let us know down below. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do that, and we'll be sure to get you more great videos on how to improve your lighting and sound for video. Talk with you soon.